Welcome, baseball fans, to this edition of State of MLB. Well, we're finally here. The regular season is about to commence this week, and this weekend begins our exhibition games against actual other teams. Some teams are playing still in our squad, other teams are playing actual games tonight. We'll see how that goes. I think some of them may actually be televised. Check it out on your own schedule there. I have MLB TV. I didn't a couple weeks ago didn't see anything published for exhibition game wise, just regular season, but we'll see what happens. We have something going on today, so that'll be exciting. It's great to finally see some baseball games going on here. Speaking of baseball season, it is a shortened season, so there's a lot riding on getting off to a hot start. While you can recover, you're largely relying on other teams to collapse or give you that lead, to blow their lead. And yes, it is possible to get off to a really hot start and then just fall off the face of the earth. Totally get that. Having said that, there's a lot to look forward to, a lot of excitement to process. So let's go ahead and get into some season predictions. Who is going to win the divisions? Who are going to be the wild cards? How is this going to shape out? What do we think is going to happen over the next 60 games worth, 12 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever that is? Let's see what's going to happen, okay? So, taking a look at all divisions here, in the AL East, keep in mind, I only listed 2-3 teams per league because I picked 17 teams that I thought were actually going to be legit contenders to make the playoffs, which means everybody not listed here, I do not personally think has a shot at the playoffs. Granted, everyone started 0-0, anything can happen, I get that. I'm going based upon off-season acquisitions or lack thereof. I'm going upon injury reports or lack thereof, going based upon last year's performance, etc. There's a lot of factors that went into it where I felt that the team I did not list here, I did not think had a legit shot at the playoffs. If your team is in that list or not on this board, I apologize. Please leave your comment section below. Let me know why you think your team is a contender, and I would love to have that conversation with you. For the AL East, we have New York, Boston, and Tampa are our potential contenders. Toronto, I realize, are up and coming. They have a lot of young blood. They're trying to get better. You have Baltimore, which unfortunately last year was a bit of a disaster, and they just need way too much to become a contender. Having said that, Toronto and Baltimore off for the AL East. We have 3 contenders here for the AL East: New York, Boston, Tampa. Now, given the fact that Boston just shipped out some talent, Mookie Betts and David Price being over the top past his prime, I get that, but he's still a good pitcher. They brought in some prospects. They're kind of trying to rebuild without decimating their team. And Tampa Bay made things very interesting last year with the wild card. Given that, with New York being stacked and going 6 games in the ALCS, I still have to go with New York as your division winner. In the AL Central, Minnesota got off to a hot start. They got into a little fight with Cleveland over the division. Ultimately, Cleveland fell off. Minnesota prevailed. Congratulations, Twins. The offseason, Chicago White Sox are my sleeper team. They reloaded with a whole bunch of talent, and I am reminded that Toronto did that a number of years ago, and they didn't go anywhere with it. They did compete, though, for the division, and therefore they were legit contenders in conversation. So therefore you have Minnesota, Cleveland, and Chicago being your contenders. I just don't see anything out of Kansas City or Detroit. If you're a fan of those teams, please tell me why I'm wrong. I would love to hear it. I just haven't seen much out of Detroit since Verlander left town. They had this core of teams in the early 2000s between Nate Robinson, Verlander, etc. that I thought, and they did actually get to the World Series. It was phenomenal. It's just they've been decimated ever since. You've got Miguel Cabrera, who's about to retire, kind of thing. They just don't have the tools, and neither does Kansas City. Kansas City had this phenomenal ride to the World Series a number of years ago. Haven't been the same since. So, given the fact that you have Chicago, Cleveland, and Minnesota, Frank Cody's a phenomenal manager. He gets more out of a team than they really are. He's like a Joe Torre kind of thing. At the same time, they decimated with injuries last year, and I just don't know that they have I think they're going to regress a little bit this year, fundamentally, is what it comes down to. I think Chicago reloaded, but they have yet to prove themselves. Therefore, by de facto, I believe, and Minnesota didn't lose any significant pieces. They're still the strong team they were last year that won the division. Given that, for the same reason New York will win the AL East, I think that Minnesota will win the AL Central. In the AL West, you got Houston, Oakland, and LA as my picks for contenders. I think Texas is doing some great things down there. I just haven't seen them put it together yet to show that they're a contender. And obviously Seattle is Seattle. As much as I would love to dream that there's going to be their year, I just haven't seen them do anything to prove that. So Houston, Oakland, and LA are your contenders for the division. And given the fact that Oakland is always in the competition, they're always battling and they're always trying, but they can never quite get over the hump. That whole Billy Beane philosophy works better in Tampa than in Oakland. I just, for some reason, whether it's the leadership or the money or the creativity of Tampa, they just do it better than Oakland does. And yet Oakland's a team that coined the damn system. So given that, I think Oakland will be in the conversation, and given the fact that LA got Rendon and Madden, fundamentally, without Madden, the Chicago Cubs do not win the 2016 World Series. It just doesn't happen. Yeah, they had Ross Chapman, they had other pieces going on, the John Lesters, and they still have some of those pieces in Chicago, but they lost Madden, which makes Chicago no longer a contender, in my opinion. And we'll get into that when we get into the NL. But because they now have Madden at the helm, I'm thinking Socia time again. Socia was phenomenal with the Angels, and I have a heavy respect for Madden and what he can do as a manager, what he did in Tampa, what he did in Chicago, and now it comes to LA. This is exciting for the Angels. Now, they still have some work to do with the rotation, but I'm glad the Trout has protection. But fundamentally, do they have enough to dethrone what is the Houston Astros? Now, granted, they lost Garrett Cole, and that's a huge piece. And while I would normally think that could be enough to knock them off the pedestal, considering the fact that they won the World Series without Garrett Cole, and they challenged for another one without Garrett Cole, getting Garrett Cole was great for them. It helped them get to the World Series against Washington, but fundamentally, they're a team that does not rely on one pitcher. They plug and play with pitchers, and they make it work. As such, despite the scandals they're under, despite losing Garrett Cole, they are still my pick to win the division until somebody else can dethrone them. I think Oakland and LA have the best chance to do that in the division, because fundamentally you're not going to get that from Seattle or Texas this year. Now, for wild card, we'll get to that in a minute. Funny thing that is, I picked these in the far east there. Okay, this will be a little more interesting here, because instead of listing first the strongest teams from last year and just picking them again, because they definitely have some dominance over their divisions, let's get into the end of National League, where things get a little more parity, a little more muddy here with the picture here. Last year you had Philadelphia underperform. You had Washington come out of the woodwork. So they started really slow, and they looked like they were not going anywhere. They used the long season to propel themselves into the picture, coming in the wild card, takes out Milwaukee, rides it all the way to the World Series championship. It's a wonderful story. It's a wonderful feel-good story. But can they do it again? They have the same pieces. We don't know if they have the chemistry. Atlanta showed how their arms and their team were solid. They just fell flat against St. Louis. But at the same time, I see them getting that playoff experience and using that to build on. Philadelphia underperformed. And after Washington, I see a lot of teams, it's it's not that so much difficult to get back to the playoffs after getting World Series contention. It's very difficult to win it again. As such, I think Washington's going to regress. I think Philadelphia is going to play up better, more up to their potential. But honestly, fundamentally, I love the fact that Atlanta showed a lot of gumption last year. They got some valuable playoff experience against St. Louis. Therefore, I'm going to go with the Atlanta Braves for taking the division for those reasons. Fundamentally, because I think Washington's going to regress and Philadelphia's going to improve, but is it going to be enough? Remains to be seen. In the Central, St. Louis, Milwaukee, and Cincinnati. St. Louis kind of caught me by surprise a little bit because they weren't in the competition for the division for most of the year, and then boom, they're there at the end. Much like Washington used a hot streak at the end to get into the wildcard conversation. Meanwhile, you've got sleepers in Cincinnati being able to use a shortened season to not burn out their bullpen too early. They've got some new acquisitions there to help make life a little bit easier for them. Milwaukee, hopefully Chris Neal is healthy again. He'll be able to play a full season. I fundamentally think that St. Louis had a great year last year. They went to the all the way to ALCS, where Washington took them out, and as such, I think they have some great pieces for future contention, but I'm not going to pick them for winning the division again this year. And so therefore, we come down to Milwaukee and Cincinnati. And while I love the story of Cincinnati, and I would love to see them make the wild card or the division, because I saw a lot of wonderful things out of Milwaukee, and I'm going to go ahead and pick Milwaukee for taking the division. I noticed how I picked in the previous video sleepers being LA, Chicago, and Cincinnati. I'm not picking any of them to win the division. I think they're wonderful stories, and I would love to see them contend. I would love to even see them challenge and prove me wrong. I'm just not seeing them as sleepers having the potential to own their division. In the NL West, the Dodgers and Arizona are who I'm picking as contenders. Fundamentally, Colorado, with a couple of key people out on the coronavirus, IL, plus the fact that last year they were very streaky at best. Plus you got the other teams in the division kind of wannabe. You got a serious powerhouse in the Dodgers, you really do. They are such a massively stacked team. It was a shock to see Washington take them out. It really was. But I think they've learned from that experience. They still have all the same tools, plus they've got new pieces in the puzzle there to help make them a powerhouse. So I can't imagine anybody dethroning the Dodgers for the division. Whether or not they can take it to the World Series remains to be seen. But fundamentally, Arizona, because they got Madison Bumgarner, makes them stronger. But Bumgarner's past his prime. He's not the same person who won 3 games in the World Series to take the division title, but he's still Madison Bumgarner. And you can't write him off until he rides off into the sunset. He's still got Bumgarner. He's still a big, huge name. Whether that's enough after losing Greinke remains to be seen, but I still think they're a contender. The rest of the division, notice how I picked 3 teams to contend their division. In the NL West, I don't have 3 teams. I fundamentally think the other teams need a lot of work, and LA is just too heavily stacked to really contend with them too well. This is probably the division with the least amount of parity going on because of how strong LA is and how much work the other teams need. Given that, let's go ahead and get into the wild card. The wild cards are historically unpredictable, and that's what makes them so exciting, and I love that about them. Given their unpredictable nature, it's almost impossible to throw darts on the board and guess who's going to be the contenders, even in a shortened season. Given that, instead of predicting who I think are going to win the wild cards, I'm going to go ahead and tell you who I think I want to see as a nice wild card game this postseason. Given the fact that they got Rendon and Madden, I would love to see LA. Who do I want to see LA play for the wild card? Given the options here, I find the scrappy nature and the creativity of Tampa always exciting to watch. I would love to see how Madden's new team does against Madden's former team. I think that would be a fun matchup, and that's why I'm picking LA versus Tampa Bay for the one-game wild card game. Let me know your thoughts on that. Do you agree with those teams? Do you disagree with those teams? Would you like to see them? What matchup do you want to see for the AL wild card? In the National League wild card, Philadelphia fundamentally did not play up to their potential, and Arizona being the only team from the West who I think could potentially contend for the title, I just think it'd be a fun matchup, personally. My own opinion. Philadelphia fans are extremely passionate. Not that others aren't. It's just that I live in Philadelphia. I have to hear their crap all the time. Oh my goodness. Imagine if I was in New York and not a New York fan. Oh my goodness. Never mind, you know. Anyway, having said that, I think the addition of Bumgarner, I think, would just plain be a fun wild card game, period, for Arizona. That's my own opinion on that. It's not based upon statistics or any other fundamental factors. I just think them getting Bumgarner, seeing Bumgarner start that wild card game would be a lot of fun to see what he can do. And given the fact that Philadelphia underperformed last year with all their additions, plus the fact that you have key players like Romuto in free agent years, in walk years, they have a lot to play for to try and capitalize on what they have before they start losing players over the offseason. So the matchup I would love to see would be Philadelphia versus Arizona, regardless of who actually hosts that game. Let me know what you think. Do you want to see those two teams and why? If you don't, why? Who would you like to see in the wild card for the AL or the NL wild cards, and why? Let me know. Do you agree with my picks for the predictions? I could have probably written these things to mix up a little bit more where I rank the teams. I just kind of picked who I thought was who was the strongest in divisions first, and I listed potential contenders against them, and then ended up being 5 out of my 6 were the far left there. It is what it is. Let me know what you think about what I think. Do you think these teams are going to win the division? Do you think somebody else is going to win the division? Do you think these are legit contenders? Do you think somebody else I didn't mention was a better contender? I want to know what you think about what I think. Please leave your comment section below. I would love to have some banter with you. I'd love to know what you think. And as always, if you happen to be coming across this video on YouTube, please hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. Thank you for watching.